Hi, I'm James Dunn. Welcome to the Inside Network. This is INDepth, and my guest is Josh Lee, Director of Link Wealth and Levera. Welcome, Josh. Great pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, James. Very much appreciative, mate, and looking forward to it.
Josh, you've built Levera from your first-hand experience as a financial advisor. Can you take us through the moment when you realised that outsourcing wasn't just useful, but actually essential to scale an advice business?
Yeah, sure, James. I think for me, reflecting on my own journey, it was from a practice I was actually working at pre-joining Link Wealth, which is now one of the businesses I'm an owner of. And essentially, I was an advisor there in 2017, and I was responsible for doing all of the back office administrative aspect for myself, as well as being an advisor. So I was not only seeing clients, but then I was having to go back after the client engagement and do all the application, all the insurance work, and then hand that over to the admin eventually after doing all of that myself. And the real eye-opener for me was when I actually joined Link Wealth back in 2018, and that was at the point of which we were starting to explore what outsourcing was, and we originally were engaging an outsourcing firm. And that was really the crucial trigger for me, where I then understood more of able to get back of my time and understanding what an efficient practice really runs like, because no longer was I having to worry about any more of the day-to-day administrative aspect of the advice role, and all I was really solely responsible for was going out and seeing my clients. So that was the real big trigger for me, and that was a light bulb moment that which led to the planting of the seeds for what is now Levera. So for a couple of years there, we basically grew our business with the help of outsourcing and using an outsourced provider. And then eventually we made the decision to create Levera and then provide that to other financial services firms around Australia. And then ultimately now we're servicing about 30 firms around Australia for all of the things that have helped scale our business, our financial planning practice quite rapidly. We're now looking at providing that to businesses all around Australia to help them achieve whatever the goals, objectives they may be, but ultimately helping them get more back time in front of their clients.
Many advisors say that they still spend upwards of 20 hours a week on administrative tasks, Josh, but there's still hesitation around outsourcing. Why do you think that is? And secondly, how has Levera helped overcome some of those misconceptions and really get the message out there to potential clients how effective outsourcing can be?
Yeah, sure, James. A real common one that I typically encounter. And I think it comes from a lot of that mindset of things being done in a certain way for so long, and that lack of willingness to embrace change. But I truly think for a financial services firm, if you want to grow and scale into the future, you have to be willing to embrace change. So the common misconceptions I think there around that, safety and security of outsourcing and going offshore, that fear and lack of control on what's going to be the quality of the work. And in terms of how we've moved to embrace that and address that with Levera is, first and foremost, like the business was built out of a financial services firm itself. Like I'm a financial advisor through in and throughout. And so a lot of the bottlenecks and challenges that these businesses face that are our clients, we're experiencing them every day and we've been through them ourselves. So ultimately, to overcome those challenges at Levera, basically what we've done is we've made the service feel like it's in-house. So no different than you would have your staff working remotely onshore. It feels exactly in the same way when they're even working offshore. So they're working in the same time zone that you would be. So if you're logging in at 8 or 9, your staff member's ultimately going to be there and clocking in and clocking out at the same time as you. And particularly around the onboarding processes, that's the crucial part of it, is we take a lot of time to actually understand our clients' businesses, how they onboard clients, what their processes look like, what CRMs that they use, and we ultimately help train their staff before we embed them into their business to ensure they come ultimately ready to hit the ground, and then we're there for that ongoing support, the training and the accountability aspect moving forwards.
You talk often about building a smarter operating model. What are the critical signs that a practice is really ready to scale up with the kind of structured support that Levera provides?
So ultimately, the key things that I see from practices that are ready to start scaling through outsourcing is they're starting to experience and face a lot of these common bottlenecks that businesses starting to scale will face. And they could be advisor burnout, staff burnout, having to turn clients away is actually a big one because they just don't have enough capacity and bandwidth to service those clients. They could actually even be compromising on the actual advice and service that they're providing their clients. And another one is trying to actually recruit can be quite difficult. If you're really trying to scale a business in the way that we have before, sometimes one of the biggest bottlenecks you might have is actually trying to find that talent. And that's really where Levera can ultimately come in, not necessarily just from a margin perspective and getting those costs down, but actually finding that talent so you can scale and continue to grow the business into the future, so you're not ultimately compromising on those core services, which might be providing financial advice, accounting or mortgage broking needs to your clients.
You give Levera assistants quite thorough training in financial services in the Australian context. Can you talk us through how they come into a new client of Levera's, integrate with that client and start contributing from minute one?
So essentially the way that we structure at Levera is staff that are getting embedded into a business, we actually hold them in what we call a pool initially. So before they even come into a practice or a business that we're going to be working with, they're actually working in our financial services company to begin. So at any one point in time, we generally have 2 to 4 staff that are floating, ready to be allocated into a business. And then when we find an actual business and a business engages us and they want some staff, basically what our process will look like is we'll conduct a thorough onboarding process. So very critical there that we want to understand systems, processes, CRMs, what type of clients are they actually seeking to service, what sort of advice are they seeking to service, because you could have a firm that's really targeted towards retirement planning, need a lot of Centrelink assistance, or it might be more of an accumulator base or working with self-managed super funds, whatever it may be. So the onboarding process is really crucial for us, so we can understand the client's needs and what that looks like, and then we go back to our pool and basically look at the candidates that are currently sitting in there, and then we'll look at pairing them up in terms of who we think might best suit that business. And that could be a matter of a business might be looking for someone who is more client facing. So they might want a staff member who has really good English, who's going to be coercing with clients on a day-to-day, calling them up, whatever it may be. Or we might have another client who just really wants someone to get through all the grunt work on the back end and focus on that administrative, and that attention to detail is really critical. So once we've basically matched them up, we'll do an introduction, and ultimately we'll let that business make the decision if they think that that staff is ultimately fit for their business. Then we'll embed them in, and then we'll hold their hand basically along the way to ensure that that integration is absolutely simple and smooth and works into the future.
With advisor numbers in Australia decreasing, but as we all know, demand only increasing in the coming years, how do you see outsourcing as being a factor in shaping the future of advice delivery in the Australian market?
So ultimately the way I see it is fewer advisors and more demand basically means capacity is the new currency. And essentially what I mean by that is there's a never-ending need of Australians seeking financial advice. And we've all seen what's happened over the last few years with a huge exodus of advisors leading the industry. So I truly believe firms that are not embracing outsourcing are going to be the ones that may survive, but they're ultimately not going to be thriving because they're not going to be able to service as many clients as they need to be able to sustain their business profitably into the future. So I think the firms that are really embracing outsourcing are going to be the ones that do so early. They invest in their back office and their team, and then ultimately have that ability to meet the growing demands and needs of Australians out there that are clearly seeking and needing advice, and we're an aging population. So if you don't have a streamlined and systemized back office team, ultimately you're not going to be able to service enough clients, or you might have to cut corners in the service that you provide, and that's not something that you want to be doing. I also think to be building a long-term sustainable business.
Levera has now expanded to multiple offices, more than 80 staff and growing. What's next for Levera, and what are the next stages in your vision for supporting even more financial and advice professionals in the future?
Yeah, sure. So we're going to continue to scale Levera in a lot of different ways. One of them, more importantly, is looking at other ways that we can help our practices grow, because we've very much nailed the administrative support operational aspect within Levera. But the other element is now starting to look at other services, such as marketing is a really big one for us in terms of we've really streamlined how our businesses that we work with can service their clients, but now they're looking and wanting more clients to be able to service. So then at the same point in time, now we're looking to solve that for our clients. So we've developed a streamlined marketing process that we can actually embed into the firms that we're working with. So that's a real key one. The other big one in the room would also be AI and integrating AI into the staff members that we work with. So ultimately making them a hell of a lot more efficient for the practices that they're ultimately working with. And really we're positioning Levera to be like a growth partner for businesses. Again, there's a lot of other outsourcing firms that are around that you can find. We're not trying to be the cheapest on the market, but we're trying to provide a really good service. And the way that we're going to do that is again, we are financial advisors, accountants and mortgage brokers ourselves. So we're at the coalface every day. We're experiencing all of the same problems that all of these practices around are having. So really for Levera, we want to be a growth partner. We don't want to just provide you an outsourced assistant. We want to basically provide you the mechanisms and the support to be able to grow your business towards whatever that may be. So Steve Sloan, my business partner, and I, we're actively meeting with the business owners of the clients we have through Levera to understand their goals, their objectives, and other ways that we can support them, not just through providing them administrative support, but helping them with their marketing, their sales processes, sharing best practice, whatever it may be. Because again, we're advisors at our heart and our core. We're at the coalface, and we ultimately want to help those businesses grow, but do our part in servicing all of the Australians out there that ultimately need advice and filling that void and shortfall that there clearly is.
Josh Lee from Link Wealth and Levera, thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate your time, James.